There was a Wall Street Journal report that you told your deputies that Facebook is at war. What did that mean?
Well, this has been a really tough year overall. I mean, I think 2018 has been a tough year for a lot of people, but we're really struggling with a number of very important issues for society, right? So elections and preventing interference in elections, content, and finding the right balance between giving people a voice and keeping people safe, security more broadly. And I do feel like our organization really needs to adopt this mentality against certain adversaries like foreign folks who are trying to interfere in elections or people who are trying to have cyber attacks that kind of threaten our community. This stuff we need to act decisively, and we need to take a lot of action in order to make sure that we're keeping people safe. And that's really been a lot of what this year has been about. And we face these big issues, but I'm leaving the year quite proud of the progress that we've made on a lot of these fronts, and I'm happy to get a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into it. I want to start with some of the revelations that came from the New York Times piece.
Sure.
Let's look at Russia. Did you and other leaders try to minimize Russia's role in spreading propaganda on the platform?
No. Look, here's what happened. In 2016, there was no doubt that we missed something really important, right? The Russian effort to try to have these coordinated information operations on Facebook and also the internet more broadly was not something that we were expecting. Elections are always a very high security event, and we were expecting certain kinds of cyber attacks, and we found them, right? The Russians were trying to hack into specific accounts, and we told the people and we told the FBI and all that, but we weren't on top of these coordinated information operations. So we've spent a lot of the last couple of years now basically building up our systems and strengthening them to be able to address this. And what we found since then is it's not only Russia, it's also Iran and other folks around the world who are doing these kind of campaigns. And these are sophisticated adversaries, and it has taken a while to strengthen our systems. And these are never fights that you're really done with. We'll be fighting to stay ahead of them forever. But I think the reality here is that these are complex challenges. Once we learned that there was an issue, we dove in to try to understand it. It took a while to strengthen our systems, but we've been very focused on this and have invested a lot in it. And anyone who wants to say that upon learning about this, we haven't been very focused on trying to both address it and also that we have, I think anyone who says that we haven't made a lot of progress, I just think that that's not right.
I think that folks talk about transparency, though. This idea that the former chief security officer wanted to publish a transparency paper, and every mention of Russia was taken out. He was encouraged not to put Russia in that transparency paper. Do you regret not being more transparent at the time, or not being more vocal about it at the time?
I wish that we understood the issues sooner, right? I wish we understood it before 2016, before the Russians tried to do these information operations in the first place. Where we are on this is as soon as we learned about different things, we shored up our systems, whether that was fighting fake accounts. Now, in the last 6 months, our systems have detected and taken down 1.5 billion fake accounts. I mean, this is like, there's an ongoing real conflict here where we're strengthening our systems to fight against that. These coordinated information operations, fighting the spread of misinformation, creating a new standard for ads transparency. These are all things that we've done in the last 12 or 18 months to push on this. And we have really pushed to be transparent when we know things. Now, I do think sometimes people say, well, how did you not know this? And I think in some of these cases, it's a really big deal to come out and say that a nation state is behind something. And before our company puts a stamp on something saying that, I want to be really sure that that's the case. So the US government, in a lot of these cases, has much better intelligence than we do. And we try to defer to them on attribution for a lot of these things until we really know for certain.
I mean, do you think if Facebook had come out more aggressively and pointed the finger at Russia in 2016 or early 2017, do you think that the public would see the company a little bit different?
Well, I think, frankly, what's important is actually preventing the election interference, right? It's not necessarily naming who is trying to do it. A lot of the steps that we've taken since then around building these advanced systems to identify fake accounts and these coordinated information operations, systems to fight the spread of misinformation, advertising transparency. All of these things, I think, have had quite good results, not only in the US midterms that we just saw, but in elections around the world. I mean, there have been major elections in France and Germany and Mexico and a lot of other countries. And I think that that's what we're responsible for getting that right. We're always going to face new threats. Russia and Iran and others, they're sophisticated and they're going to keep on getting better at what they're trying to do. So we need to keep on investing to stay ahead of that. And that's what I think our responsibility is here.
But respond to the criticism that folks say that this was delayed or denied and that it just wasn't transparent enough. I mean, can you respond? Because I know that's what a lot of folks are looking at this and thinking, what's happening inside these walls? Yeah. Respond to that criticism directly, that Facebook wasn't transparent enough up front, that they didn't take, of course, we all see all the stuff that Facebook has done, and you guys have increasingly been transparent about it, but the criticism was that Facebook initially wasn't transparent enough, didn't name Russia, and that there was actually drama of the chief security officer going to Sheryl Sandberg and saying, this is a problem. So can you respond directly to that?
Yeah, I think the real issue is that we were behind on building the systems that we needed to help prevent these attackers in the first place. At each step along the way when we learned about it, we've invested a lot to go make sure that we understood the full reality of what was going on and to build up the systems that are in place. And I think the reality is now we are in a place where our systems for preventing election interference are stronger than any other company out there, and probably almost any government too. So I wish that we were faster on this. These are complicated issues. Unfortunately, once we started learning about them, they're not things that you can just resolve in a few months. It really has taken a year or longer to get all these systems in place. But I would strongly push back on any suggestion that when we learned about this, we didn't push very hard to address the issues that we saw and that we didn't communicate about them.
Quite a few revelations in this piece. One referenced a decision to keep up a Trump post that many considered fell under the hate speech category. And part of this revelation said that one of the reasons your team decided to keep it up was because they were worried about a conservative backlash. I know Facebook is under a lot of pressure from the Democrats and the Republicans, the government in general. Are leaders making content decisions based on appeasing political leaders?
No. Look, in a lot of these cases...
But did they in that situation?
No, they didn't. And I was involved in those conversations. And I think it's very important that people have the opportunity to hear from what political leaders are saying. So, in those cases, I don't think that that a lot of the content violated our policies. We also have a specific point in our policies where newsworthy content we give a special deference to, which certainly someone who's a prominent politician going out and making a point fits into that. So. No, I think we did the right thing there.
But surely this idea that someone would say that if we take it down, it's poking the bear, would be controversial, especially when you guys were trusting Facebook to make some of these difficult content decisions. That is clearly politically motivated.
Yeah, I read the report that you're referring to. It is not clear to me at all that the report is right. A lot of the things that were in that report, we talked to the reporters ahead of time and told them that from everything that we'd seen, that wasn't true, and they chose to print them anyway. So my take on a lot of the critique this year is we face a lot of really big issues, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge that. I mean, all the stuff around elections and preventing interference and all the content issues and finding the balance between giving people a voice and keeping people safe, these are really big things. And I think a lot of the critique that folks have had about our company, I read and I think a lot of it is fair, and in a lot of it there are things that I think we need to do better and learn from. At the same time, I don't think all of it is fair, and I think not everything is accurate. So I think that that's just an important perspective to keep in mind on this.
So it wasn't accurate, though, that part of the reason they didn't take down that post was because there was concern over a conservative backlash?
No, that was certainly not any part of the conversation that I had.
I was on the reporter call where you repeatedly denied that you knew anything about hiring this opposition group PR firm. Can you state it for the record? Did you know anything about this?
Well, like I said on the call, I learned about this when I read the report as well. But I'm not actually sure that that's the most important point. I think your question is right, that this is, I do run the company, I am responsible for everything that happens here. I don't think that this point was about a specific PR firm. It was about how we act, right? And that's why I think it's important not just what we're doing in relation to this one firm, but that we go through and look at all of the different PR firms and folks who we work with and make sure that that we're operating in the way that we want to.
Have you looked at any other PR firms and questioned or cut ties with any other?
We're going through this process now.
How's it been?
We're still in the middle of the process.
The PR firm was founded by Republican political strategists, and it launched a campaign linking Facebook critics to George Soros. This is a common tactic used by anti-Semitic and alt-right groups. That's why I think people were so shocked when they found out about this. I think that was one of the parts of the report that a lot of folks had real questions about. Does that strike you as stooping low?
Yeah, I wasn't particularly happy about that piece of it, and that's certainly a big part of when I read about this, what made me want to look into this more deeply. I think what was going on here is that there is a lobbying group that is basically just aggressively pushing against our company. And they've positioned themselves as if they're this grassroots organization that has spontaneously formed. And that's just not true, right? It's funded by wealthy critics of the company. And I think that the folks who are working on this thought that that was an important point to point out. So the intention here was never to attack an individual, but I mean, there are these lobbying groups and folks who are out there whose primary purpose is to attack the company. And I do think it's fine to push back on them.
I mean, but in this particular scenario, launching, it's not common for tech companies to necessarily hire these types of firms. And many would argue it's a way of spreading the same type of conspiracy theories that Facebook has worked so hard in the last couple of years to get on top of.
Yeah, look, from the review that I've done so far, it doesn't appear that anything that the group said was untrue, as far as we can tell. But again, this really isn't about one PR firm. This is about the standard that we want to hold all of the different folks who we work with. And we work with a lot of different PR firms and a lot of different contractors and vendors at the company, and we need to make sure that we're comfortable and that all the folks that we work with uphold our values.
I mean, do you approve of the way they went after George Soros? Do you approve of that methodology?
I don't think that this is the type of thing that our company should be engaging with.
What would be your message to George Soros?
Well, I know that George Soros has been the target of a lot of really horrendous attacks, and I think that is terrible. And I certainly wouldn't want anyone who's associated with our company to be a part of that.
There are a lot of questions now about Sheryl Sandberg's role in the latest controversy. Can you definitively say Sheryl will stay in her same role?
Yeah, look, Sheryl is a really important part of this company and is leading a lot of the efforts to address a lot of the biggest efforts that the biggest issues that we have. So when you look at a lot of the progress that we've made over the last 12 to 18 months on issues around elections or content or security, Sheryl is leading a lot of that work. And she's been an important partner for me for 10 years. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done together. And I hope that we work together for decades more to come.
But will that role change at all? Are you going to make any changes? Not even looking at this crisis, but looking at a lot of the different ones over the last year. Are you making any changes in your top leadership? I know there have been a lot of folks who have left. Many people say Facebook, as it was, has gotten to this point, but it needs a new leadership team to get to the next point. What kind of changes are you going to make?
Well, if you look at the management team at the end of 2018, it's quite different from what it was at the beginning of the year. On the product and engineering side, I completely restructured things. So now we have a group that's focused on all the apps that we have. We have extra focus on security and a lot of the infrastructure that we're trying to build, and that reflects the issues that we're facing in the world. On the business side, a lot of the team has turned over, right? And we have new folks in place. We just hired Nick Clegg, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Britain, to come in and run all of our global affairs and policy. So he's certainly going to bring a fresh and outside perspective to the work that we're doing there. And we've also gotten new leaders in places like partnerships and marketing and comms and a number of these really important areas as well. So I think we're leaving this year with a much stronger team in place.
You are CEO and chairman of Facebook. That's an extraordinary amount of power, given that you rule a kingdom of 2 billion people digitally. Shouldn't your power be checked?
Yes, I think that ultimately the issues that we're working on here, things like preventing interference in elections from other countries, finding the balance between giving people a voice and keeping people safe. These are not issues that any one company can address, right? So when I talk about addressing these, I always talk about how we need to partner with governments around the world and other companies and nonprofits and other sectors. So yes, I don't think fundamentally that we're going to be able to address all of these issues by ourselves. They're too big for society. But let me give you an example of a place where I think independent governance is really helpful. So one of the things that we are going to start rolling out soon is basically letting people in the community get an independent appeal when they feel like their content is taken down in a way that doesn't fit with our community standards. All right, so now you post something. If someone else reports it, we might take it down if we find that it's hate speech or violates our policies. But if you disagree, you're going to be able to appeal, and you'll also be able to appeal to an independent body. And that's an example where that independent body will have real teeth and power, and will be transparent in the decision that they're making. And if I want to overrule that independent body, then I'm not going to be able to. So I think that's really important. I think people in our community need to know that the rules and the standards of the community are being upheld independently, that they can kind of audit that and get a sense of that, can always be confident that none of the enforcement or what we do is made for business motives, but can be done by folks who are independent of the business and the company that we're building. So those are areas where I think that building more independent governance will be very valuable.
So you are not stepping down as chairman?
That's not the plan.
That's not the plan. Would anything change that?
I mean, like eventually over time. I mean, I'm not gonna be doing this forever, but I certainly I'm not currently thinking that makes sense.
I want to talk a little bit about the changes you guys also made recently with the Facebook newsfeed and the algorithm. Can you explain what exactly you changed and what was your thinking behind it?
So, in terms of content overall, right, we have a community of 2.5 billion people. I think the vast majority of what people share is good. But then there are these cases where we really need to prevent people from spreading terrorist content or hate speech or bullying people or doing really terrible things. And that falls into two categories. So one are things that violate our policies where we need to take down the content. But then there's another class of content, which is, it doesn't violate the policies, but it's just sensationalist, right? And people have a natural tendency to want to engage the most with the most sensationalist and provocative content. And that's true on social networks. It's also true on cable news and in tabloids and all media. But I think we can correct that and make it so that the most sensationalist content isn't what spreads the most on social networks. And I think that will create a better and healthier discourse. And it can help to fight against polarization. It can help to make people feel more comfortable in participating, so more people can have their voices out there. So this is very important work, and it's one of the things that I think we're doing across the company that I think is most important.
And I mean, but this idea of eyeballs on screen, will this impact your business if you change the algorithm in this way?
I don't think it will over the long term. It may in the short term. But I mean, we've already done a bunch of changes like this. Earlier in this year, we reduced the amount of viral videos that we were showing in Newsfeed, and we reduced the amount of time that people were viewing that content by 50 million hours a day. So yeah, in the short term, I think that this stuff might have some impact. And certainly as we've navigated all these big social issues that we're trying to address, there have been some impacts to our business along the way, but we're going to try to do what we think are the right things for people. And my real belief and everything that I've learned from business over the last 15 years is that if you serve people well, even if that might mean that you're not doing as well in the near term, you'll build a stronger community and a stronger business over time. So I really believe that. I think that all the changes that we're making are going to improve our community, improve our business, and hopefully help contribute to a healthier discourse overall.
What we're seeing with some of these reports coming out is people talking anonymously. There's this idea, and I've spoken to folks inside, outside the company, that bad news doesn't sit well at the top. Is that something that you guys think about? I mean, this idea that Alex Stamos went to Sheryl Sandberg with some bad news and it didn't necessarily sit well. I mean, is that something you guys are thinking about, especially as more and more reports are coming out showing there's a bit of a disconnect?
Yeah, I mean, getting transparency inside a company is really critical. But if the people running the company don't have a sense of what all of the people around the company are worried about, then you're not going to be able to run the company as best as possible. And so that's why I do things like every week I run an open Q&A. And it's that way anyone can come and ask me any question. But it's not only that. We try to make it so that we encourage people to ask the hardest possible questions. We create a poll in advance, and people can submit questions, and people can vote on them, and they can do that anonymously. So that way, I can make sure every week that I know what the top issues are that people are worried about inside the company, and so that I can address that. And we certainly have a pretty flat management culture. We're not generally very hierarchical. I talk to a lot of product managers and engineers and just go through many layers of management because I want to hear what's going on. And that's how we try to operate the company. And I think that that's very important.
I asked you this when we sat down during Cambridge Analytica, so I ask you this again. Why should people trust Facebook?
Well, we're dealing with a lot of big issues, and I think that there's no way around that. These are really important issues for society around elections and content and security. And we definitely haven't been perfect, and I wish that we were faster on a lot of these things. At the same time, I think anyone who's looking at the company over the last couple of years knows how much we've changed to address these issues. And I think anyone who's kind of looking at the progress that we've made should come away from these last couple of years with the progress that we've made at protecting against interference in elections, the improvements that we've made on stopping the spread of misinformation and harmful content. Ultimately, there are always going to be issues that come up when you're running a company and you're serving more than 2 billion people around the world. So I think what we need to be judged on is over time, can we get these things right? And can we improve and learn from the issues that we face to serve people better? And I realize that that's not always going to be as fast of a process as people would like. It can feel like, okay, if an issue comes up and it takes a year or two to address, maybe that feels like a long time. But these are really complicated things. And if you take the content example, one of the things that I think it's quite similar to is, if you take a free country or a city, people don't expect the leaders to eliminate all crime, right? I mean, that's not kind of what we expect. But what we expect is that people are going to address the issues reasonably, are going to reduce it to a low level and continually improve and stay ahead of new types of threats. And I think that that's what people should expect from us too.
And I think, I've heard you guys talk a lot about transparency. I think the problem with some of these reports coming out is this idea of transparency is important and we keep hearing it, but then you have these reports coming out that say something otherwise. So, how, and I guess I ask it again, how do you ensure that you do win back public trust? I think this is an incredibly pivotal point for the company and for you as a leader, because it certainly seems over the last year, we haven't stopped hearing about, one thing after the next that shows otherwise that the company hasn't been as transparent.
Yeah, well, look, there are always going to be issues, but if you're serving a community of more than 2 billion people, there's going to be someone who is posting something that is problematic, that gets through the systems that we have in place, no matter how advanced the systems are. We are unfortunately in the position where you have these foreign nation state adversaries who are actively using sophisticated attempts to try to interfere and do different things. So I don't think that the right expectation is that there aren't going to be issues. I think the question is, how do we address them? At the same time, I do think that there is a bigger picture at play, which is, what we believe in the world is giving everyone a voice, right? And giving everyone the ability to share their experience and connect with the people who they want. And I think by and large, a lot of the criticism around the biggest issues has been fair. But I do think that if we're going to be real, there is this bigger picture as well, which is that we have a different worldview than some of the folks who are covering this. And
But if we've given the world a voice, look at what's happened in the last year. You've had elections in the last years, elections manipulated, hate speech that's gone viral and turned offline. It certainly seems like this mission has been accomplished in many ways, and there's a whole new set of problems that perhaps you guys didn't foresee. And now we're in a very complicated place where there's not an easy solution.
yeah, these are complex issues that you can't fix. You manage them on an ongoing basis. But look, do you think that the world is better with everyone having a voice and having the ability to express their opinion and being able to connect to who they want? I don't think we're going back to a world where there were just a handful of gatekeepers who got to control what ideas get expressed.
But Facebook's a new gatekeeper.
And even if we could, well, I'm trying to make it so that we're not. I mean, that's why making it so that we're building these independent governance mechanisms and things like that are really important, and that's work that I really care about. But I think that the world will keep on moving in this direction. More people will keep on getting a voice. I think that that's good, and I think there are certainly going to be issues that we need to work through over time. But I think that while we are doing that, we can't lose sight of all of the really positive things that are happening here as well. Not just in terms of communities and people being able to connect with groups that are really meaningful to them, whether it's around a disease or a community around veterans that they wouldn't be able to connect to otherwise. But even if you just think about the economic impact of what we're doing, we serve 80 million small businesses around the world. About half of them have told us that they're hiring people because of using our tools, and that without Facebook and the tools that we provide, that their business would be significantly smaller and they wouldn't be hiring as many people as they are. So, a study came out. The U.S. economy added about 4.5 million jobs over the last year. If you just look at what people are telling us, the small businesses who use our tools, we've directly been able to contribute to creating many more jobs than that across the world. So I think that this is the power of giving people a voice, giving small businesses, giving communities, giving everyone everywhere the ability to connect with the people who they care about and get their opinion across, and giving everyday people the power that previously only big companies would have had. So that's it. The world is going to go more in that direction, and I think by and large that's a good thing. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing on this. And there are big issues, and I'm not trying to say that there aren't, that we need to work through. But I do think that sometimes you can get the flavor from a lot of this, from some of the coverage that that's all there is. And I don't think that that's right either. We need to make sure that we address these questions. These are really big and important things for the future of our society and the future of the internet. But we also need to keep pushing in the direction of empowering more people, because that's good.
And I think the last couple of years is where we're grappling with the unintended consequences. And I think, there is a lot of weight to that. It's not just media coverage. After Cambridge Analytica, you made some strong statements that you said the buck stops with you, so you're ultimately responsible. So what message does it send to employees or investors or the public that no one in Facebook's C-suite has been held accountable in what's been, you could argue, a year of crisis?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by no one has been held accountable.
Well,
if you mean I haven't publicly blamed someone else, that's just not the kind of person who I am.
Have people lost their jobs?
On an ongoing basis, I manage performance inside the company. This isn't like, okay, an issue comes up, I'm gonna publicly go blame someone. I don't think that that's the right way to be. But yeah, my job on an ongoing basis is to make sure that we have the best team that is going to be able to address the challenges that we face, and the challenges evolve over time. So, you've seen us do a big reorganization of how our product efforts work to be able to really focus on all of the apps, and to focus even more on security because of some of the issues that we're grappling with that needs to be a bigger focus. And on the business side, we've changed a lot of the leaders. So I think that it's pretty difficult to look at the team and the way we're organized at the end of 2018 and say it's the same as the beginning of the year.
The New York Times called it delay, deny, deflect, the motto for how Facebook leaders handle the last couple of years in crisis. What do you think the motto should be? What will it be going forward?
It's learn from the issues that we face and focus really intensely on making sure we resolve them, even if it's going to be long and painful, even if it's going to take a year or two to get on top of some of these really complex issues. And even if the solutions are never perfect, these are really important things for society. And I just want people to know that we take this incredibly seriously and are very focused on this. And I think over the last couple of years, we've made a huge amount of progress, and I'm very proud of that.
Have you as a leader looked at yourself in the last year and reflected and made some hard, challenging changes? Because you look on the outside and there are a lot of people questioning your leadership, questioning this company. Have you personally changed in any capacity to be able to be better equipped to handle Facebook now rather than the Facebook that you built in your dorm room?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm always thinking about this stuff. And I think the biggest learning for me, which I'm too slow to, is that when you connect 2.5 billion people, you're going to see all the good that they're capable of and incredible things, but you're also going to have all these people who just try to use those tools to subvert the same ideals that we care about. And now, we're taking that lens towards everything that we're doing, and not only trying to build the good to empower people, to give more people a voice, but in everything that we do, we're working to make sure that those tools can't be misused. And I think that that's an important lesson. We were focused on it before, but not enough given the importance of what we're doing in the world. And I think that that's something that we're going to come out of this episode, this series of challenges that we're dealing with, and this will be baked into the DNA of the company, of how we operate.
You believe you'll come out of this episode?
Yeah.